I wanted to read first from the Gospel of Mark and then a second reading from the Gospel of Luke. They cover the same theme and the same information. And so from the 13th chapter of Mark, the first 8 verses. As Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings. Do you see all these great buildings?" replied Jesus. "Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." And as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us when all these things happen, and what will be the sign that they are about to be fulfilled?" And Jesus said to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are the beginnings of birth pangs." And then from the Gospel of Luke, the 21st chapter, 5 through 19. Some of the disciples were remarking about how the temple was adored with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God. But Jesus said, "As for what you see here, the time will come when not one stone will be left on another. Every one of them will be thrown down." And teacher, they asked, "When will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are about to take place?" And he replied, "Watch out that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and the time is near. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and uprisings, do not be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. But before all this, they will seize you and persecute you. They will hand you over to synagogues and put you in prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors, and all on account of my name. And you will give testimony to me. But make up your mind not to worry beforehand how you will defend yourselves. For I will give you words and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents, brothers, sisters, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death. Everyone will hate you because of me, but not a hair of your head will perish. Stand firm, and you will win life." Thus ends the reading of the word of the living God for the children of God. And thanks be unto God. Have any of you ever made a prediction? You said something's going to happen in the future, and if you did it come true? Maybe sometimes yes, maybe you made a lucky guess. That's what predictions are generally. There have been some really good ones in our history. Thomas Watson was chairman of IBM, the big corporation, in 1943. And he said, "I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers." I bet we got more than 5 people here that own one. Popular Mechanics magazine in 1949 made this prediction, where a calculator on the ENIAC, that was a big computer of the day, is equipped with 18,000 vacuum tubes and weighs 30 tons. Computers in the future may only have 1,000 vacuum tubes and weigh only 1.5 tons. How many are going to carry one of those around in your pocket? And there was an inventor by the name of Lee DeForest. He claimed that while theoretically and technically television may be feasible, commercially and financially it's an impossibility. Don't you people understand anything? Television is in every home. How many? I think most of them have more than one. I mean, he just missed the mark. And the Decca Recording Company made a big mistake When they made the prediction, they were talking about a group that said, we don't like their sound. Anyway, guitar music on its way out. That was in 1962, and they were talking about some lads from Liverpool called the Beatles. They're never going to make it, that group. Well, as the disciples walked out of the temple in Jerusalem, Jesus paused. He looked around, he looked back at the temple, and he predicted, do you see all these great buildings? Not one stone will be left on another. Now, to the disciples, the temple was bedrock. It was indestructible in their minds. Nothing could bring down these walls. And look, teacher, they said, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings. You know, surely all this is not going to be gone. Well, the smallest stones in the structure weighed 2 to 3 tons. Many of them weighed 50 tons or more. The largest existing stone, part of the Wailing Wall, which still stands some, was 12 meters in length and 3 meters high, and it weighed hundreds of tons. The stones were so immense that they didn't have to use any mortar or any binding material at all between the stones. They were there by their weight only, and they couldn't be moved. They stood there. And it had stability you couldn't question. And the walls tower over Jerusalem, at some places over 400 feet above Jerusalem. And inside the 4 walls of the temple was a 45 acres of flat ground that had been hollowed or hewn out of the hill. They just taken the hill and flattened it out, 45 acres of it. You could stand and get about 250,000 people in there at one time. Now, no sports structure in America today even comes close to that. 250,000 people. You can understand why the disciples were surprised. As they walked down the Kidron Valley with Jesus and up onto the Mount of Olives, where Peter, James, and John wanted to hear more about this. They couldn't believe it. And Jesus predicted that a structure so immense would be leveled on the ground was just unbelievable, implausible. And they pressed Jesus for more information. They wanted to know when this was going to happen and what would be the signs that this was going to occur. When was it going to take place? And I just imagine in their voices was a hint of fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear that their lives were about to change forever. Jesus had never made a prediction like this. He had said many things, but this one was different. They could understand this one, the destruction of the temple. And they could understand what he was saying, but they couldn't comprehend it. They couldn't believe it. Well, 40 years later, after the prediction, the temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. And what are we to learn from the prediction and its fulfillment, its coming to pass? Well, we learn, I think, that true, real bedrock faith. We learn what it's all about. The kind of faith that you can stand on, build on, and believe in. First of all, bedrock of faith is not to be found in temples and the buildings. Now try to place yourself in first century Jerusalem. From there, anywhere in the city that you looked up, you could catch a glimpse of the temple. It was that massive and that tall and big. It had been a 45-year project with King Herod to build it. It had been the center of their national life for over 1,000 years. And the temple was where the Jews sacrificed, confessed their sins, gave the first fruits of their harvest. They made yearly sacrifices of lambs to God for the nation, on behalf of the nations and the nation's sins. It was here where they celebrated Passover and Pentecost, and the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Weeks was celebrated. All of this was in the temple and done there, celebrated there. With the temple being so central to their life and their worship, the major question arises in their minds. How will they worship God in the future? How could they worship God without the temple, the holy place to go? It was a question that the disciples, they had no answer. They couldn't conceive of it happening. They couldn't conceive of an answer if it did. You know, we understandably get attached to things, tied to things. We can even develop sentimental attachments to them. But the temple was unique. God himself is said in Deuteronomy to be the architect, giving the exact dimensions of the altar, the grounds, the walls, the doors, down to the very size of the stones. This was literally, in their mind, God's building. He oversaw its construction. And did you know that after Jesus died, the early Christians continued to make sacrifices at the temple? They continued to go there, even after Jesus' death. Paul even makes an offering in Acts 21. It's a place where John's birth was announced. Jesus' religious knowledge, if you will, his intelligence was recognized by the leaders at the temple when he was 12 years old. You remember the story? They were heading home and they discovered Jesus wasn't with them, and they went back, and where did they find him? He found him in the temple, being questioned by the elders. All of this takes place in the temple. The money changers that Jesus overturns their tables and chases them out, it's in the temple. It's where it occurred. Years later, it was where Paul was arrested. With the temple so central to their life, how could they possibly worship God without it? You know, I like the story about Joseph Haydn in his later years. On a special evening in Vienna, at the Vienna Music Hall, his oratorio of the Creation was being performed. And as this majestic work moved along, the audience was getting caught up in the music and the emotion of the whole thing. And it was building to a crescendo where the passage comes, and there was light. And it was so dramatic, with the chorus and the orchestra combining, that the people watching, the audience, they couldn't contain themselves anymore. And they all jumped up spontaneously at the same time, clapping. Haydn, weakened by age, confined to a wheelchair, was there, and he struggled to stand, and he motioned for silence. And with his hand he pointed towards heaven. And he said, "No, no, not from me, but from thence comes all. From thence comes all." And having given glory and praise to the Creator, he fell back in his chair exhausted. Perhaps that's the lesson Jesus is wanting the disciples to learn. Haydn directed the crowd's attention away from himself and his talents, and from the beautiful music, and he pointed them to God, the one from whom all help comes. So first of all, bedrock faith is not found in a temple, in the building. Neither is it found in a church building or the most beautiful cathedral you could imagine. And secondly, bedrock faith is not found in signs. Tell us the disciples insisted, when will these things happen? What will be the sign that they're about to be fulfilled? There was a preacher on TV not too long ago, talked for about an hour. He had authored a new book, and supposedly he explained everything needed to know about the coming of Jesus in the end of time. And he said, "You must have this book. You must." He said it over and over again. A telephone number scrolled across the bottom of the TV. There wasn't even a toll-free number. You had to pay for the phone. it seems that he had a prophetic insight as to what was going to happen in the world events. And for mere $14.95, you too could have that insight. You too could know. Well, a preacher that saw it on TV called the number. And he got one of the operators, the poor operator, as it turns out. And he asked her, he says, why, if the author of this book thinks it's so vital to the survival of the planet, and that the end is so near, why ain't he giving it away? Why does he need $14.95 for each book? If the end is here, he's not going to need the money anyway. Who needs a bank account when the end of time? And he said, if it costs so much to print, I understand that you got to pay for printing, but he can forget the bill and not pay it because the time's ended. And the poor operator, she got kind of frustrated. She said, sir, I don't know much about theology. To which the pastor responded, neither does the writer of this book you're selling. It is the greatest of all the mysteries of the Bible, I think. 23 of the 27 New Testament books talk about the second coming, about Christ coming back, returning. But we have no indication of when or what will bring it about and usher it in. The problem with predicting the second coming is that most predictions center on world events. Now, let me tell you what I think is a little secret. World events, I don't think, are indicators of when God is going to return. The scriptures tell us very plainly. Wars, earthquakes, international political instability, famine, persecution, Jesus says, are not a sign of the end. They're simply facts of life. It's been this way from the beginning. It's been with us. It'll always be with us. Verse 7 reads, do not be alarmed. These things must happen. The end is still to come. He doesn't say they're predicting the end. He said these things are going to happen. And you've got sort of a comma there, a pause, and says, it's still to come. It's not here. Now, I can't tell you when it's going to happen. Nobody can. But I can tell you why it's going to happen. It's going to happen to redeem the planet and to redeem you and me. Christ comes to redeem us. And if you don't live your life with an expectation that he will one day return, you've missed one of the bedrock teachings of Jesus' life. It ought to be a part of your life too. Because if it is, it will make you watchful. You'll be watching for it to come. It'll make you cautious. And it'll make you prepared. If you think the end is coming, aren't you going to prepare for it a little bit? Get ready for it? The bedrock of faith is not in temples or signs. The bedrock is Christ himself. Years ago, Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks did a comedy skit called The 2013-year-old man. Some of you may have seen it, may remember it. Well, in this skit, Reiner is a TV interviewer, and Brooks is the old Jewish gentleman. And at one point, Reiner asked the old man, he says, well, did you always believe in the Lord? Brooks replied, no. We had a guy in our village named Phil, and for a time we worshipped him. Reiner says, you worshiped a guy named Phil? Why? Brooks said, because he was big and mean and he could break through two with his bare hands. Reiner said, well, did you have prayers? Brooks said, yes. Would you like to hear one of them? Oh, Phil, please don't be mean and hurt us or break us with your two hands. Reiner said, so when did you come to believe in the Lord? And Brooks said, well, one day a big thunderstorm came up and a bolt of lightning came out of the sky and hit old Phil. And we gathered around, we saw that he was dead. And said, we said to one another, there's something bigger than Phil. Amen to that. There's something bigger than Phil. The disciples are told in verse 5, watch out that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name claiming, I am he, and will deceive you. My friends, there are a lot of false prophets in the world today. There always have been, and my guess is there are going to be until the end of time. They're claiming to have the answers. You can have it for a price. They're deranged people trying to rule the world. They manipulate and they're recruiting people to kill in God's name. Trying to convert you to their religion of war. They go by many labels. We mainly call them terrorists. Terrorists. But I'm here to tell you there's something bigger than old Phil and bigger than those terrorists. History will sweep all these people away and under the rug, and they'll never be thought of again. But one day old Phil's going to get what's coming to him. Christ will return. And we all will stand, not on the bedrock of a temple made with human hands, which is here today and gone tomorrow. No, we'll take our stand with Christ, the bedrock of faith, the rock of ages. I say these things in the name of the Christ. Amen. Amen. You would stand and turn your hymn to 377. It is well with my soul. The altar is always open to anyone who wishes to come kneel in prayer, or if anyone wishes to join the church for profession of faith or transfer of love. We invite you to come. God's goodness is greater than your badness, and that God's willingness to forgive is far greater than your capacity to sin. Remember always where you're hurting, here in this holy place. Go now, go with God, and fear not. Amen.